What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about some of your questions because I did a previous Q&A about how to become a data analyst, and ever since you guys have had a ton of questions about how to learn data analytics, which is a little bit of a different set of questions, and because it seems like you really like that video, I am going to make this one and answer more of your questions. As always, if you have any more questions that I didn't answer in this video or in my previous one, which I'll link up there, please feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll try and answer as many of them as I can in the comments. But I'm also happy to do more of these videos so that this advice can reach more people. And if you think this video is valuable, hit the like button so that more people can find this, and if you'd like more content like this, don't hesitate to subscribe. So without further ado, let's get to what you guys were curious about. So the first question that I got is, do I need to download anything on my laptop if I want to learn SQL or SQL, so structured query language? And the short answer is no, you don't. But if you've ever been on this channel before, you know I don't like short and context-less answers. So here goes the long answer. Bear with me because this is actually a really good question. So what SQL is a scripting language used to manage relational databases and query information from them. And the key here, without going too much into definitions, is that a database can live in a couple of different places. And because of that, there are a couple of different ways that you can go about learning SQL and where you're going to be learning SQL and having those databases. So, option number one, you can download a database management system on your computer or laptop. What this means is essentially that the server that the database is going to live on is your local user on your computer. All this means in terms of a server is a piece of software or hardware that is providing functionality to other programs. Essentially what a database management system is a UI where you can actually manage the data in your database, such as MySQL or Database Visualizer, or I think it's officially called DB Visualizer. But this is not necessarily the most beginner-friendly option. So what I would suggest instead is going with either option 2 or 3 that I'm going to explain sooner. But if you are set on learning how to use a database management system on your laptop or computer locally, I would suggest going with a course that teaches that. So that's my 2 cents on that. You can do it, it's a very interesting option, it's just not the easiest option to go with. So in terms of learning SQL, option number 2, which is what I did when I started, it's not necessarily still the easiest option, which would be number 3, but we'll get there, is instead to use a cloud-based database. So what this means, as I already said, is that a database can live in a couple of different places. What it means for your database to live in the cloud is literally just that you have remote access to a piece of hardware somewhere else through the internet that stores your database. So obviously I am hoping, if you're here, you've probably heard about services such as Amazon Web Services or AWS and a bunch of other cloud providers, and this is just basically the gist of it, is that the database lives on a piece of hardware somewhere else and you can access it through online services or your browser. And in a lot of these cases, you obviously don't necessarily need to download a database management system on your laptop. You can access everything through the internet. So that's one option that you can do. And this is actually something that is taught in the course that I've been recommended in my Starting with SQL and Python video, which I'll link up because it's been very popular. And that course is really good. It teaches you the basics of understanding and managing a database, and also a wide range of SQL skills. So I'll also link that in the description box. But this is kind of a more beginner-friendly option, and it also reduces the obviously strain on your own laptop or computer if you don't have a lot of memory on it. Usually databases don't take too much of it, but if you wanted to save yourself from that headache, you can obviously do it online. The third option that I want to talk about, which is obviously the easiest way to get started, is a lot of course providers such as DataCamp or DataQuest provide a user interface in your browser where they already store the database wherever, most likely on a cloud service. And you can use their UI to query the database without having to install anything, without having to create the database yourself. but they will provide all the underlying data and all the exercises for you on the course side. So that way basically you have a very low threshold to get started, and if you then afterwards want to actually learn how to manage databases yourself and create them on either cloud or your own local server, you can do that. But I say if you want to get started quick, it's easiest to do on these type of service provider websites. So yeah, I can link a couple of examples down below, and if you'd like to try that, feel free to do it. But yeah, that's kind of the long answer to the question of if you need to download anything on your computer. No, you don't. There are plenty of options and plenty of course providers and websites where you can actually get started without burdening your laptop. So that's question number one. Another question that gets getting asked quite a bit is if you need to be good at math, and I'm gonna say that the underlying question that I think might be in this particular one is if you need to like math, and I'm gonna say that you don't have to be a math genius to go into data analytics, but you can't hate math if you do it. The reason for that is that obviously a lot of analytics is based on statistics and probability and some, you know, regular algebra. So having a good baseline in all of the three is really important. If you hate math, you probably hate the logical type of thinking that you need in order to be a successful data analyst. So that's kind of why I say you can't really hate math. You kind of need to at least like math, even if it wasn't like your favorite subject of all. But you don't have to be a math genius. I think the type of math that you're going to have to be able to work with depends a lot on the industry and the type of analytics that you're going to be doing. So in some industries, such as the financial industry, I think there might be a little bit tougher, more mathematical modeling involved than, for example, in business analytics, where I think you still need that, you know, statistical and probability background. But what's more important is, I would say, context in which you can work with the data in the business context. So understanding how business management works might be more important than really extensive math understanding in business analytics. I have quite a bit of experience in systems and product analytics where you can get quite mathematical, but a lot of that analytical side of things focuses on performance and usage. So a lot of the times it's more so about understanding the underlying processes and how the data reflects those processes and how they're performing. So it depends a lot on the type of analytics that you want to be doing. So I think research that and determine the sort of extensiveness or depth of mathematics that you think you're going to need. But, you know, a good baseline of stats and algebra and probability is something that you're definitely going to need. And you can probably, if you Google just mathematics for data analytics, you can definitely find courses on that. So if you're interested or you just need to brush up a little bit, just, you know, Google is your best friend in any type of scripting or programming job, so do that. And kind of a follow-up on question number one, question number three is, what should I focus on when getting a laptop for data analytics? And I think this is a good question, and I think it's an important question because I don't want you to be investing your money into something that you're not going to need, which in a lot of cases is not a whole lot of performance power in most cases. So if you're learning and you're in that sort of beginner stage of data analytics, you definitely don't need to invest a ton of money into gear. I would almost say please don't, because a lot of this stuff that you can actually do online doesn't burden your computer that much. So like performance in that sense isn't hugely important. If you have a web browser and your computer runs it fine, you should be grand for most of the learning parts. If you do want to look into things like the actual Tableau software on desktop and not browser, I would say look at the system requirements for that, what amount of memory it might need. And so that might be one thing to think, or Power BI or any of the visualization softwares that you might want to learn how to use, because obviously if you only go with something like SQL, you don't really have a way to visualize things other than Excel, and Excel visualizations are kind of 2000 and late. So most companies do prefer dashboards that are not Excel. So Tableau, Power BI, I think SAS has a couple of softwares that could be good. So In those cases, yeah, you should probably check out the system requirements and the amount of memory that they require, but most of the time, if you have a normal, up-to-date, contemporary laptop, you should be more than grand. I went on with my 2014 MacBook Air for quite a few years. I literally actually purchased the MacBook Pro 16-inch, the 2019 i7 one, today. So, ever since, I think, 2014, 2015, I've been on my MacBook Air, so you should be fine. Question number 4. How do I take notes when I'm studying SQL or Python? And this is an interesting question. I love taking notes. I love note-taking software and I love stationery, so I'm very excited to talk about something like this. Normally, I've been taking notes in Evernote or Notion. Both have the opportunity for you to insert a code block, so it doesn't run the code block, but obviously when you have the chance to insert it, you have it in a nicer format. I don't think Evernote gives you the option to select the coding language, but Notion actually does. So if you're taking notes in Notion and you want to have just your programming, lecture or course notes, and then you want to have an example piece of code, for example, you can choose the language that you're actually studying and it'll format it nicely for you so that it's easier to read. And I think that's actually really neat. That's usually what I use. I'm also starting to venture into taking more handwritten notes on an iPad, so I'll probably, keep you up to date on that, but I'm very new to it so far, so I'm trialing GoodNotes and Notability for that sort of thing, but I'd still say Notion is a really good option. It's free, same as Evernote. Those two are definite favorites. I'm kind of experimenting with best practices of taking notes, so if you'd like content related to how I take notes when I'm studying things like computer science, programming, do let me know. I would be happy to make a separate video on that. I'm losing count on what question this is. I think it's 5. This is how good at math I am, clearly. The next question is where to find datasets for projects, and that's a good question. Practice datasets and project datasets aren't too hard to come by, but I would say that if you want clean datasets, Kaggle is a good place to start. There are also a lot of not necessarily super clean datasets, but fairly, on a lot of government websites. So governments, cities, the UN, they do provide quite interesting datasets just for free online. I think almost all of open data sources. What you need to do, you need to cite the data source. So when you have your analysis, if you share it, you need to be able to say like where you got your data from. But that's honestly not really a big deal. Pretty easy to put into things like Jupyter Notebooks. But yeah, I would say just Google open data sources. There are surprising data sources available. So I know that in at least Finland, you have things like, I think, data about the electrical networks and everything basically freely available. So, it depends on where you are. Sometimes you might have a language advantage and get data that, is in a language that you understand but isn't necessarily English. But yeah, I'd say Google around for open data. I'll link a couple of examples down below for Kaggle, UN, and a few others that I know. So that's a good place to start. There are also APIs for a lot of web services that provide data for you. So if you learn to use Python, using APIs is actually a pretty easy thing to do, although you feel like a freaking wizard when you first do it. So if you want to get, that kind of data sources and data from APIs from different services, do learn that. It's insanely cool. So that's another one. If I think of anything else after I film this and I'm editing this video, I'll link all of the resources in the description box of this video, so please go and check that out. The next question is, what types of projects should you include in a portfolio or practice with? And I think there are a couple different ways of looking at this. First of all, what types of analytics do you want to do? If you want to go into the financial industry, maybe try and find some practice work sets or data sets. Try and find some practice data sets about that particular industry or something related and showcase your ability to analyze data in that context. Look at LinkedIn profiles or LinkedIn job ads for job descriptions and descriptions of what types of analytics, the types of analytics jobs that you're interested in would have to do, and try and sort of pin your project in your portfolio towards that, so that when the recruiter or the manager or interviewer looks at your portfolio, they can immediately see that even if you didn't have experience in that particular industry, you clearly have thought about it and you have an approach that works for that particular industry, and you can work with projects in that context. So that's one. Another one would be to find a project that demonstrate the breadth of your capabilities. So preferably go through the entire data analytics process that I described more in my Getting Started with Python and SQL video, which I'll, it's in the info cards. Basically, from cleaning to all the way to the analytics and communication parts of the data analytics process, make sure that you have a solid project that shows and explains how you go through the entire process. Third, I would focus on something that you're really good at. What's kind of your data analytics superpower? And sometimes it's not necessarily what you do in the analytics sense or scripting sense or programming sense. It might be, for example, that you're incredibly good at doing presentations. And if you're incredibly good at doing presentations, you might be a great communicator, and maybe you just want to have your analytics project and link up to a short slide deck about your findings, so that you can actually, communicate that in addition to being a really good analyst, you can do executive style communications and share your insights in a professional way. So that might be something that you want to consider when you're looking at things, what you're really good at and what you enjoy doing, and sort of bring that side of personality into it. I wouldn't include more than maybe 3 to 5 projects that are recent enough, that showcase these couple of things and that are relevant to the industry, because it's not like recruiters or interviewers have ages and ages to, go through your and everybody else's, in terms of candidates, portfolios. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. The next question is, do you need certifications to enter into data analytics? And no, I don't think so. When I was looking at this question, I was trying to think about certifications that you could get that would help you. But honestly, especially if you're just getting started, if your employer needs you to be certified in something, I'm sure they'd be willing to pay you to get certified. If you can showcase the skill sets in your projects, I don't think there's a lot of added value in terms of certifications. Possibly later on in your career, I don't know. I know I have a couple of friends that are like Tableau certified, so they figured that they really like visualizations and building dashboards in Tableau, so they want to sort of try and distinguish themselves in that particular set of people who do that for a profession. But if you're just getting started and you want kind of an entry type of data analytics job, no. I don't think it's necessary. I think if you have work experience or projects that showcase those skills, the piece of paper isn't going to do anything for you. Some people might disagree. It's the same as any other industry, I think. Some employers might value it more than others, but personally, I don't have any certifications in data analytics. I'm not planning on getting any certifications in data analytics, so I've done fine, and most people that I know have done fine without. And we're getting towards the end, but like just a few more. Does it matter if you're switching careers to data analytics from some other career? Is a question that I've gotten a few times, and no, it doesn't matter. It's great. Actually, if you have work experience and if you're transferring to do analytics or more analytical roles in the industry that you already have work experience in, like all the better, because you have that context. I always talk about this in terms of data analytics. If you are analyzing something, you need to understand the broader context of what you're analyzing, so the business or the organization or the product or whatever it is. And if you have experience in that industry already, it helps. You're transferring to data analytics in a completely different industry, you still have work experience that you can speak to. So you're still going to be more easily employable than someone who has zero work experience. If you have that experience and you can link it to why you want to pursue analytics instead of, your current career path, all the better. It's your story, own it and use it to your advantage. Don't be ashamed to be like, okay, I'm switching careers. Like, you have your reasons and you can hopefully speak to those reasons as to why this is something that you want to pursue. So you might need to obviously put a little bit of energy into learning the skills and knowledge that you need in that career change. So going from something completely else to data analytics is not an overnight thing, but if you're you know, here and listening to this and you have this question, you probably have the willingness to put in some hours to learn the necessary skills. So I have no concerns about you changing your career to data analytics from something else. And another question that I keep getting that I'm not going to get too in depth in this particular video. I'm happy to do a follow-up, and I probably will. But is why I'm no longer a data analyst, or why I call myself a former data analyst. And I promise there's nothing sinister behind this. But if you'd like to hear more about why I'm no longer a data analyst, or call myself a former data analyst, and hear more about my thoughts on, you know, the future of the industry and all of this, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you don't miss that upload. And yeah, so without further rambling on, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did and you'd like content like this in the future, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.